I'm thrilled to be here. It's my first time in Ireland, so it's a great honor to represent Newfoundland and Labrador here. And thanks again to Don and everybody who helped organize this, and also thanks to Megan Drover at the Government of Newfoundland who helped put this together on my side. So before I get into my wordy PowerPoint, I was just thinking about Tim O'Connor's remarks earlier about the importance and influence of cultural industries, and was thinking that Newfoundland has a similar relationship to the rest of Canada as I think Ireland has had to the world. So in Newfoundland we have a population of just over 500,000 people, and a diaspora of Newfoundlanders throughout Canada, but we punch above our weight in terms of culture, and so many of the best known TV and film stars and writers and musicians in Canada are from Newfoundland. And no doubt this is largely because of the big Irish influence in Newfoundland. 30 or 40% of the population, I think, at least claims some Irish heritage. And actually I noticed in somebody's presentation that the highest percentage of population per capita Irish in Canada is in Newfoundland. And I just wanted to note also that right now the big deal in Canada, but especially in Newfoundland in the film and television industry, is a show called Republic of Doyle, which is a big hit drama, 13 episode seasons, hour-long drama, that's sold to 73 countries in the world and big hit in Canada. But one of the stars is Sean McGinley, who's from Donegal. So although there's no big Irish co-production at the moment in Newfoundland, certainly our biggest project has a strong Irish connection at the moment. So now into what we do. So every province in Canada, more or less, every jurisdiction has a provincial entity that is mandated to foster the growth of film and television. So in Newfoundland and Labrador, it's the Film Development Corporation, and we're a provincial crown corporation, which means that we're arm's length, but we report to the Minister of Tourism, essentially. And so our mandate is twofold: one, to develop the Indigenous industry, and secondly, to promote Newfoundland as a destination for filming and for people to do co-productions with our producers. So I'll just tell you a little bit, for those who aren't involved directly in the film and TV industry, that I'll just give you a little bit of background there. So if you go to a cinema or watch a movie or watch TV at home, it actually, for those who aren't inside the industry, it's a huge effort and expense to create these projects. So a feature film will have a crew of 70 people, or Republic of Doyle, I think, has 110 people who work on it. So from there you can see that there's big economic benefits to having film and television production in your area. So I'll just go quickly through some of the different formats that most of us know, but these are sort of categories, let's say. So there's feature films that in Canada are more than $5 million generally now, actually probably $7 to $10 million. Then there's a low budget feature film category around $1.5 million or slightly less. We've done quite well in Newfoundland actually with that category. 2 years ago, the first Atlantic Canadian feature film ever to go to the Sundance Film Festival was a film called Grown Up Movie Star that had a $1.2 or $3 million budget, about $1.2 million. And then there's low budget television, so $50,000 to $150,000 per hour, which is more kind of documentary, reality-based kind of episodic TV. One-off documentaries, which are generally $300,000 per hour or up. This used to be a big bread and butter part of our industry in Newfoundland and in Canada generally. We've always been really well known for our documentaries, the National Film Board and so on. And for many years there was a huge component in the broadcasting side where broadcasters were acquiring those type of documentaries, and strangely and sadly in the last couple of years that's actually gone away a bit in the market. And then there's the Hollywood movies that of course everybody in the world is chasing, the 30, 40 million, $100 million Hollywood movies. Newfoundland, we've done that a little bit. I think when the corporation first started, before my day, I think it was thought that Hollywood was coming, and every year would have some giant Hollywood production. We've had one or two, but I mean they're not really our bread and butter. Really, it's our local industry that drives what we do. And just wanted to note that So of a film budget, pretty much all of these budgets, so you spend $1 million on film, 60% of it is labor and about 40% on the other goods and services. So that's pretty huge. If you have a local crew who's largely working on it, you can see not just in employment, but also tax spin-offs of people buying houses, cars, gas, restaurants, that sort of thing from the labor. So some of the successes of the Newfoundland and Labrador film and television industry. So the Film Corporation was founded in 1997, and at that time there was peaks and valleys, but about $2 million a year in film and television production. Now, just to put this in perspective, Ontario, the province of Ontario in Canada has a $1 billion film and television industry. Vancouver's $900 million or $1 billion. Quebec is $800 or $900 million. So from essentially nothing, one big car commercial is a $2 million budget. So so from $2 million to this last fiscal year of just over $33.5 million in production activity. And that's essentially, you can directly base that on the fact that there's a film development corporation with our incentive programs, which I'll get into in a little bit. So, so on behalf of the province of Newfoundland, we've invested to date, including in tax credits, which is a rebate that comes later, but it still comes out of the exchequer. So we've invested $44.8 million in the years since 1997. And so this is the big note on why everybody's in the film and television and media industries generally in the world. This $44.8 million has leveraged in $142.5 million in outside money. So it's almost 188 almost in production activity, not counting this year, since the Film Corporation was created. So that's sort of the big note for any region who might wish to get more into the film industry is that it's outside new money coming in, and also particularly in the Canadian system. I couldn't speak to Ireland, but I assume it's essentially the same. That's film and television specific money that comes in. It's not like it's money that comes from the federal government or anywhere like that, the provincial government. That would be money that might be spent on, roads or hospitals or schools. This is TV money. So if it didn't go to Newfoundland for Republic of Doyle, all the sources, other investments you can leverage in, then it would go to Vancouver or Toronto or somewhere else in the world. So that's a big note too. So this chart is pretty straightforward. It just shows kind of the proportions of, in the blue is what we've invested, and the pink is what's come back in, and the beige or whatever that is the grand total of the value of the film and television industry. So now I'm going to get a bit wordier here, but so we've had extensive economic analyses done of the industry, and so I can tell you that pretty consistently, if you have $33.7 million in film activity, production activity, like we had last year, that's 430 direct, indirect, and induced full-time employment equivalencies. That's a Government of Canada, Stats Can kind of concept, full FTEs. They know what it means. I just know the numbers, how you do them. But essentially, direct employment is the people who work on the crew. Indirect is, let's say, somebody who has a company that's hired by the film company, so a lawyer or an accountant or a caterer or something like that. And induced is the guy who has a job at a lumber shop because they bought so much lumber to build sets. But that's pretty impressive for a place the size of Newfoundland, 430 full-time job equivalencies. So that next bullet, I'm sorry, is a repeat of what I've already said. We'll skip over that. So that means, so if you do the math on that, since the Film Corporation has been around, there's been 2,400 full-time employment equivalencies created just by the film and television industry in Newfoundland. So you can imagine what that would mean. I can't do the math in my head, but I mean, the Canadian industry is valued at about $5 billion, so that's tens of thousands of jobs. And so that same economic, ACOA is as an ambassador Hearn knows well, ACOA is the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency, so they're a federal government entity, so they did this economic impact analysis for us a couple of times in the last 10 years. And so for every dollar that we we spend. In other words, every dollar that the provincial government invests, $3 basically come back into the province, new money. So again, sorry for the dense wordiness here of this PowerPoint. So some of the other benefits of the film industry. So Newfoundland is, there's a major center, St. John's, of approximately 200,000 people, and then the rest is fairly rural. So the film industry has been in a lot of different areas besides St. John's. So in terms of economic development outside of the metro center, it's been quite helpful. And it also, it's extremely good for promoting our culture and talent. And obviously it attracts investment that wouldn't be coming to the province otherwise, stimulates economic activity, contributes to economic diversification, and obviously increases employment in general. And one thing that we've always noted about the film and television industry is that it helps the other cultural industries a lot. So writers, actors, theater technicians, musicians, visual artists who might work in set design, that sort of thing, get a lot of their employment through the film and television industry. And in fact, I mean, somebody did the math one time that writers were paid more one year through the film industry in Newfoundland than the publishing industry. So that's quite important as well. And it's obviously a very positive promotion of Newfoundland and Labrador, and it's environmentally friendly. So these days our wealth is largely due to the oil industry, and Canada in general is a natural resource exporter nation, and that's why we're well off. But film is interesting in the sense that it's a knowledge-based, environmentally relatively low impact industry. So here are some of the successful projects. So Random Passage was an Irish, Newfoundland, Quebec co-production. Shipping News was a feature film a few years back. Rare Birds was a local feature film that did really well. Life with Derek, the first season was shot in Newfoundland and went on to several more seasons, and it's been sold throughout the world. Hatching, Matching, Dispatching, Heyday, Above and Beyond, these are sort of local Canadian projects that were quite large. Diverted as well, Movie of the Week. Many television documentaries. And then more recently we have a film called Beatdown, which was a low budget film that's done quite well. Grown Up Movie Star, I mentioned. Down to the Dirt was a low budget film that was the first ever Newfoundland film to be in competition at Cannes. And Cracky the next year similarly went to Cannes and also the Toronto International Film Festival and was listed as one of the 10 best feature films of the year. Love and Savagery is a feature film that I believe was released in '09, which was again an Irish, Newfoundland, Quebec co-production. One of the interesting facets of Canadian and Newfoundland production is interprovincial co-production, so Ontario and Newfoundland and an outside country, or Quebec and Newfoundland and so on. And so these other bullets are just here to mention we have a big festival. Our flagship festival is actually the Women's Film Festival. St. John's International Women's Film Festival is our main market and film event for the year. And the Nickel Independent Film Festival, which is a sort of more of an emerging filmmaker festival. And NIFCO is a great spot if you do have any interest in talking to me about working with Newfoundland. NIFCO is the Newfoundland Independent Filmmakers Cooperative. It's really the heart and soul of the Newfoundland industry. About 97% of everything that's ever been done has been by people who are members of the producer or the director is a member of this co-op. And it's also the best post-production house, very high-end, best post-production house east of Montreal. And now there's a company called Best Boy Entertainment, which has a different model. They try to keep all their staff in-house instead of going from sort of 2 or 3 staff to having 80 people working for them during a big project and then back to 3. They've got now 30 or 40 people, and they do a lot of TV work, and they're expanding rapidly into digital media. The bread and butter for them has been children's programming, but they're getting into feature films as well. So they're a great company. If you have any interest in talking to me about them, I can pass you along to them as well. And then, of course, the big success right now is Republic of Doyle. So it's a 13 one-hour drama series at $22 million per season, 6 months straight of full-time production work from June to December, and then another 3 or 4 months of post-production. A lot of Newfoundland talent involved, over 250 direct, indirect and induced jobs. There's a dual platform, a webisode component. There's more than 1 million viewers per episode, which is huge for us. And also one of the great benefits to Newfoundland and Labrador is the province has done, well, you can see these posters on the wall, a award-winning advertising campaign that's really been extremely well received. And so when Republic of Doyle is airing, you know, you go to commercial and it's a Newfoundland tourism ad, which are beautifully shot and really well written and produced. So it's quite good that way. Season 3 has just started. Russell Crowe was in the first episode. He's a friend of the creators, and as I mentioned, Sean McGinley from Donegal is one of the stars. So that's the big news to us these days. This Republic of Doyle project, looking good for a 4th season to be produced this coming summer. Keeping our fingers crossed there, but it's also got its challenges because. What's essentially happened is that all the A-list crew is working on that show for 6 months of the year, so it makes it a little bit of a challenge for us as the film corporation to promote. You know, if I talk to a producer tomorrow who says, you know, I've got this project I want to do it in Newfoundland and I need to shoot in July and not in the winter when it's snowing because of the story, it's going to be a challenge. But so that's a problem of success, but it is a challenge. This graph just, it's a little bit old because it was done on the 05-06 fiscal year for a study that was released in 08, but it just gives you a sense of how complicated, the reason I put it in is just give you a sense of how complicated the film and television industry is. I mean, I was in the industry myself for many years as an editor and showrunner and worked in production, and you know, lots of people have fantastic ideas that we'd love to see on the screen, myself included, but this pie chart just gives you a sense of kind of how you have to put together a show. So you've got the CTF and EIP, CTF, EIP, and LFP. That's now called the CMF, the Canada Media Fund. But you can see, you know, you've got. So if you have a provincial co-production, you have two provinces tax credits, you have a federal tax credit, you have the CMF funding, you have the producer's own investment, you have, you know, the provincial investment. This is the same if you're shooting in Manitoba or Ontario, you know, there'll be the provincial involvement. So it's really quite, you know, foreign sales, distribution, that sort of thing. So, you know, every big show, the financial structure has 9 or 10 items, you know, each of small percentages adding up to 100%. For us, we can do a maximum of generally basically 30% from out of the province in terms of overall. So the 8% there is would represent our equity. And I guess the skew is a bit low because there's film and TV here, but on a specific project, it's about up to 20% in equity and then tax credits. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about international co-productions. So again, this is a little bit wordy, and by the way, if you ever you know, have trouble sleeping at night, you can go on our website and read all the regulations and rules about how we do what we do. So international co-productions are basically something that everybody in the world chases. They're hard to achieve, and they're even harder to achieve for a place the size of Newfoundland. But I mean, this is our job, and we're happy to talk to all comers about it. But essentially for us, our client is the Newfoundland production company. So if you were an Irish production company, you would have to have a relationship, a company formed essentially, a Newfoundland company formed with a Newfoundland producer, and then you would apply to us. There's an international co-production treaty structure that Telefilm Canada, federal government agency, oversees on feature film. TV is a bit different, but essentially it's quite complicated. But this may be a bit wordy. But you know, the main thing is if you have an idea and you brought it to me, I would put you in touch with several Newfoundland producers, or one that seemed like the best fit, and then you guys could work out the deal together, and then that production company would come to us as our client. So again, this is quite detailed. I'll skim over this. So we have two main programs. We have the equity investment program and a tax credit. Most provinces in Canada have some form of a tax credit. They vary in their rules and regulations and amounts. For us, it's a 40% tax credit on labor. But we also have, unusually, not all provinces have this, mostly smaller provinces, we also have an equity investment program, which means that we can directly invest into a film or television project with a Newfoundland company, and then we take an equity share. And again, I won't bore you with the details of how the recoupment works, but I mean, we're on a an equal basis on the first tier, a pari passu with all other investors. So when the production company gets money back, the first money goes to the distribution company on a feature film, and then we share equally in the rest. And so that's to a maximum of 20% normally of a project. So if your project is $1 million, we can potentially invest $200,000. We also look, in terms of international co-productions and so on, we would look at the Newfoundland spend. So if you had a feature film that was a $10 million budget, but only $1 million was being spent in Newfoundland, we probably wouldn't do the 20%. On the full amount, we'd look at what the benefit to Newfoundland was. Now, it's two components. So development, most places tend to work like this. Development, we can do 33%, so this is the seed money to get the scripts and so on happening. On a feature film, you usually go through probably 2 or 3 phases, along with Telefilm Canada. In television, it's changed a lot over the years. Television companies, broadcasters don't tend to do as much development anymore. We'd still see some occasionally, but for instance, with Republic of Doyle, it was done kind of in-house, and then they very quickly got to the stage where the broadcaster wanted to pilot. So that's time up. How many more minutes, sorry? 5 minutes, okay, thanks. So they went right to the pilot stage of producing a pilot, so we were equity investors in the pilot, which was never aired, but it was enough to prove that the show was great and that they wanted to invest in 13 episodes of it. And so the equity investment, so essentially development is a loan, so it's non-repayable in the sense that if you don't go into production, you don't have to pay us back. But if you do go into production and we are equity investors, then what we've given you in development becomes a repayable loan on the equity investment. The tax credit, most places in Canada have a tax credit, and there are similar things throughout the world. They vary a little bit how the incentives work. A lot of places in the States do sort of rebate things, and several places in Canada do sort of more grants, but how ours works is that it's based on the Newfoundland labor, so 40%, essentially 40% of the spend on Newfoundland labor is rebatable to you. It's a little bit complicated. You apply to us as a Part 1, you take that letter to the bank and you can get gap financing. Then you go into production. Then after the production is done and everything is audited, you represent that to us. We audit it. We pass it along to the provincial government, Department of Finance, who actually issues tax credits. And so they audit it again. And it goes then on up to the federal. 99.9% of people who have a provincial tax credit will have a federal tax credit, so it then goes on to the federal tax entity. The certificate is sent on to them, and then when they calculate their tax credit, in the end, the production company finally, after all that, gets the money back. But it's a great incentive. So with equity plus our tax credit, on a big project, you can come into around 28-30% of the overall funding structure, having come from the province of Newfoundland. So I've just said this about the tax credit rates. The point there about the 25% of total production costs, that's almost always it's 40% of labor. It's a calculation that's just done to figure out the lesser of, and that's what you get, the lesser of. So it's 25% is usually on very small documentary projects with fewer people employed. And that's it. Thank you very much. Happy to, oh, go ahead, clap. Happy to answer any questions, or, you know, if you'd like to ask me more about Newfoundland, please do.